Welcome back to the channel. It is 100 degrees out here. Alright, so we're back on the YF-17 project. So I'm working on flight controls now. I got my spars set up for my tails. Ooh, excuse me. I got the rudders hinged. I still have to make control horns for those. And right now I'm working on the stabs. So you guys can see what's down here. I want the stabs to be removable. So what I've done here is, I got some 1/64 ply over the channel for the bearing. Basically, what the bearing is a 1/4 inch piano wire, which overkill for this model, but it makes a nice slop-free strong connection for the elevator. You can see I've got this slot in the brass tube, and I've drilled and tapped the rod, so I can pull that screw out, that little sleeve, and then I can remove the elevator once I unhook it from the servo. So, but that slot allows the elevator to move, just like you see here. See how the screw is stationary, but the elevator is moving. Obviously, the rods aren't glued in yet. I'm going to be reinforcing this with some more wood around here, so that way it can't bust free or loose. But then I'm also going to be doing plywood on the bottom of these slots as well. Once the brass tube is all glued in there, it'll be something like that. And then obviously I'll pull the screw out, but I'll have a plywood piece here, and I may end up doing like a carbon rod or of some sort, or something to stiffen it out this way as well. It's pretty strong up until right in here, and then it starts to get flexible, so I'll have to deal with that. Or I might just put a little strip of 1/64 plywood on both sides, and that'll make like a I-beam spar basically. But I mean, they're pretty strong, and they haven't been coated yet either. And I might put a little glass over this section as well, just to really make sure it's strong enough. This is a very large flight control. Obviously it's kind of skewed because of the camera, but even still, it's a really big flight control. So, and being full flying tail, a lot of load. So just working on all the flight control stuff right now. I got to figure out where I'm going to put the servos. I haven't done any of that stuff yet. I want to keep all this stuff. I don't want to have just servos sticking out everywhere. And honestly, I think for what we're doing here, it's not really going to work anyways. I'm probably going to have some push rods for the rudders and the elevators, and I'll probably have the servos mounted just behind the fans, so I can still kind of sort of get to them if I absolutely have to. But they'll be concealed in the fuselage, unless there's just a really easy way to mount them on the surface without them being super obvious. I'll look into that, but for right now it's looking like they're going to be internal, so that's where I'm at with that. Still have to hinge and stuff on the wing, haven't gotten there yet. Working on the tails first, figured I'd start with the easy stuff and go from there. So we'll come back after I've got some more work done here. So you can see here we got the I did have these stiffeners here. Very similar technique to what the old Byron kits used to use on some of their foam core wings and tails. But I have to do the same at the bottom. They're pretty strong now, so I don't think I'm gonna worry about glassing them or anything. Once I put the I make a fiberglass control arm that's gonna kind of extend out in front and behind the pivot point. Once I add that in there, it's going to connect to this plywood and probably this trailing edge, and then stop out here, and then that'll really stiffen everything up. I mean, especially considering the weight and the performance of this model, it's not going to be crazy fast or anything. I'd say 120 tops, which isn't all that fast, all things considered. So I think these will be more than fine for aggressive flying at this weight and speed of this model. So anywho, let's make some control horns now out of fiberglass for the elevators and the rudders. Alright, so it's been a few weeks since I've been able to work on this thing, but today I finally got back at it, and now we have everything hinged. So you can see here, You got these nice 1/64 ply seals. I got the leading edge flaps to where they pretty much stay sealed until they go to extreme angles. I don't think it's going to go past that, and that's at low speed, so I'm not too worried about it. All the higher speed stuff will be in this region here where this stays nice and sealed up. So I got that all figured out. Let's see here, I got all this stuff figured out, sorted. Obviously these hinges aren't glued in yet, so I'm not gonna change too much. But so now I got to figure out servo placement, and then after all that's done, then I'll get the spars in here. I'm going to use flat carbon stock for the spars. The wings are honestly pretty strong. I mean, these is all balsa out here. We got balsa all along through here, so I mean, this isn't going to be a very fast or very heavy model. 120 miles an hour tops is about what I would think this thing's going to go, and probably way less than 8.5 pounds, so it's not going to be very heavy. It won't need a ton of spar in it. But anyways, yeah, I got the leading edge flaps done, or hinged anyways, so I don't know if that one moved way down. But anyways, that's where we're at, and Bentley is making good progress on his steerman. Got the lower wing just about done, the upper wing's down, tails, and the fuselage is pretty much all there, so it's not too shabby. So, like I said, next we got to figure out servo placement, not just on the wing, but also on the tails. So that's the next step. So you can see here I've made the parts for this side, and you can see there's a step in there now. What I've done is I've taken a blade and I've depressed the foam. That way when the wood glues in, it'll be basically flush. I'm going to have to do some body work with spackle, but basically I'm going to keep that to a minimum. So I've compressed the foam, smushed it down in with an 18 blade, which is one of these little fellas. And you just come along here and you squeeze it down. You can do that on balsa wood too. So like when you do these seals over the top of the balsa wood, you can crush the balsa wood down. You can use a flat blade screwdriver for that on balsa wood. Works a little better. But on the foam, that blade works just fine. Also, so what I've done here is the wing's so thin, I'm going to have to just glue the servos in, at least the smaller ones. I'm going to be using some Spectrum servos. These are like what you get in the F-16. They're digital Metal Gear, small and pretty powerful. So these are Spectrum A7100s. It's a thin wing servo. They're super strong. It's what I have in the elevators on my Bearcat. You need a very strong servo for a leading edge flat, because if you don't, you can have catastrophic failures in flight. Mostly at higher speeds. Now the slats or the flaps will be locked out basically at high speeds, but at lower speeds you still need a lot of power to actuate these. So anyways, what I've done here is I've made the pockets. Let me flip this over. You see I've drawn a straight line perpendicular to the hinging line. That's where the push rod will be, and the horn. But what I've done here is because the wing is so thin, you couldn't just hog out a pocket and glue it to the foam. If you were to leave the foam, it'd just be too thin, it wouldn't be strong. So I've taken 1/64 plywood, and not only does that give me a nice area to bond the servo to, but it really strengthens the area, and especially this area. This is, not only do I need a strong servo, but I need what the servo is mounted to be strong, so that that doesn't fail. So I've tied it into the plywood forward and aft. And if you never really used any 1/64 plywood before, it's super neat stuff to use, and it's really useful for all kinds of neat little things, um, especially for making these seals for these flight controls. And I know a lot of people get kind of stuck in their ways when they're building stuff, and a lot of guys kind of take the super easy route and make make a beveled flight control. That way it's got room to move. But I can't stand that. It just looks super cheesy, and it's kind of like the easy way out. And this isn't even that difficult to do it this way with Robart hinges, with pin hinges. So it just makes a much nicer looking model, and it's more aerodynamic. You don't have the big giant gaps underneath everything. It just looks way better, and it functions really well and just works. So if you haven't tried it before, give it a whirl. Maybe expand your horizons a little bit. But anyways, just gotta get the covers done on this side. Gotta make some small channels to run wires to the center of the wing here. Essentially, other than that, the wing is pretty much structurally done at that point. I do have to add to my spar. You can see I've got a pencil line here. I'm going to cut some flat stock carbon out at work. Got a bunch of scraps there. So I'll make a nice long spar that runs all the way across the back. And again, I'm going to have 4 bolts to hold the wing on. 2 of them will go through the back spar. And I'm going to have a short front spar that connects all this stuff together, and it runs along the front here. And then there'll be 2 screws up in the front. And those will get bolts and bland nuts, and that's the front mounting pad and then the rear mounting pad back here. So plenty of strength there. Again, it's kind of a fun challenge to figure all this stuff out, and it's neat to see it come along. So anyways, let me get these other plywood parts done, and I gotta start making all the control horns for everything. Same thing for the rudders and the elevators as well. So the next step I'm going to do once I get this wing sort of mostly done is get the rudder setup done and the elevator servos mounted and all that stuff. So that's the next step on the servo job. So this is what I've worked up for servo arrangement here. The real YF-17 has a large fairing that runs from the leading edge flap back to the aileron. I would assume that's where the actuators are. The real one has a super thin wing, so they probably didn't have room for all the hydraulic actuators in there, so it has a fairing. So I've aligned everything so I can make a fairing and hide all of this stuff. Yeah, so anyways, that's my theory on the mixing. I think between the throttle settings and the elevator input, I think at high alpha, at part throttle settings, I'll be at my max throw. And then for partial throttle tight turns, I'll be, somewhere in here. I don't need a ton, but I think having a little bit would be cool. And for super aggressive pull-ups, you're gonna, like at the bottom of a square loop, the power's off, so you're already gonna have a bunch in it. And then when you go to pull up, it's gonna complete the rest of that throw. So that's my whole theory on how to mix those in instead of just having them on a switch or something. You could do that, I suppose, but I think I want them dynamic to where they're going to be adjusting as I fly. Now that might change once I fly this thing and discover that that doesn't work, but I feel like it's going to work, and it's going to take some experimentation and some dialing in to figure it all out. Obviously, I'm going to start at much smaller throws, and then I'll increase things and continue mixing things until everything starts to work properly. So, but overall, I'm pretty happy with how it's turning out. See if you can see the twist in the wing. So I got some washout in it, and I got some camber in the airfoil on the tip. That's naturally going to be there, and then the root airfoil, if that's what you want to call it, is basically flat plate. And symmetrical at the root. So anyways, hope you guys enjoyed the latest update on the YF-17 project, and I'm in a big time crunch now to get this thing finished up for the event in September. But I think with some last minute late nights, and if everything just comes together properly, then we're gonna get it finished. So anyways, hope you guys enjoyed it, and we'll see you in the next one. Alright, so I think in the interest of keeping this video watchable in length, I'm gonna cut it off right there. You see we got the wing. Let's slide this flap up in here. Get the wing installed temporarily, obviously. So we're probably going to run probably about that much flap for full flap. Obviously the leading edge flap won't be down that much. Somewhere around there, and then full deflection on the leading edge flap will probably be around here. So I have some ideas on how I'm gonna operate these, because if you watch real jets fly, a lot of it has to do, well, most of it has to do with the angle of attack on the airplane. Obviously I don't have a computer on board to be able to do that. I suppose I could attempt something with a gyro or something like that, but I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to have it mix. I'm going to have them mixed to two different functions, one of them being the throttle and the other one being the elevator. So basically I'll have it mixed with the throttle to where at full throttle, or actually anything above 3/4 throttle, they're going to be up, and the less throttle you have, the more they're going to come down. And I'll probably cut that off about right here, so at idle they'll naturally just be right at this position. So as you give it more and more power, they're going to go up and up. At high speeds, you do not want them to come out even in a turn, unless if you're going really fast. So basically at part throttles, as you start to pull up, they'll come down more and more and more. And if you're at low power settings, like for doing high alpha, they'll already be down, and as you're pulling up, they're going to increase. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to try and set it up to where I get about that much at full angle of attack.